Hey everyone, Dan here. We are just before Power Hour on Thursday, June 10th. Today we're going to take a look at Clover Health. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And let's jump right in. So we'll take a quick look at the chart today with Clove and we'll reference back to it, I think, at some point in the video. But what I really want to take a look at in today's video is a bunch of information that's been flying around about how Citadel ran this pump and dump scheme on Clove in order to, I guess, sort of draw attention away from AMC and GameStop, which are really out of control in terms of like what Citadel's losses are with them, and also to claw back a bunch of money that they've lost on AMC and GameStop in order to, I guess, shore up their accounts even more. So I saw all this stuff flying around yesterday, especially after I put my video out. I started to get comments on it, and I'm like, what are these people talking about? So I kept trying to press some people for sources for the information that they were sharing, and I was able to track down some things, and I thought that I'd share them today and try to put them into perspective, and at least share what it looks like to me. So let's hop over here. And good news, this is finally up to date with the May 28th short data. So Clove still the third most heavily shorted of the float stocks, 36.6% as of 5/28. So very, very high, like we've been talking about for a long time. Obviously today it's having an incredibly down day after a big run up the other day. Let's quickly check in on the availability and the borrow fee. So the borrow fee shot up briefly over 100, has come back down a bit, but it's still relatively in high territory, especially with all the action and activity that's going on. I'm pretty happy with that fee being there. It's certainly better than the single digits that we sort of saw a while back before this started to get much attention. And then, there hasn't been a ton of activity throughout the day today in terms of like this feed, at least. Maybe there's a lot of other activity going on, other brokerage or broker dealers. I don't know. But, been a relatively flat day in terms of like what's coming in and going out. The availability is not really changing that much. Okay, so updated data from yesterday, the short volume ratio dropped quite a bit yesterday, and to put yesterday back in perspective, let's drop the 5-day here. So yesterday there was this huge decrease, right? And so I had said in yesterday's video, I think a bunch of this has to do with people, sort of taking profits, and obviously shorts still continuing to come into the space and driving down the price, but I think that it's being heavily aided by people ditching their positions because maybe they felt that the profit that they had made was good enough. Maybe they felt that as they see what profit they did have sort of start to dwindle as it went through this crazy activity and couldn't recover. Maybe they decided, okay, when this run up failed, forget it. I'm just going to lock in what I have and just be happy that I'm getting out with a little bit of green. Some folks might have just spooked altogether, and they thought, this is getting crazy that we're approaching 30 all of a sudden, and then you see your first big candle, and they're like, forget it, I'm out. So, in any case, this is just to say, I think that there was plenty of panic selling going on, and obviously still shorts continuing to come in. Anything in the 20s is still pretty significant, so it's very, very close to 20 yesterday, but I don't sort of see a ton of activity today, and yesterday there was a small decrease. So, it's interesting that this is when this huge sell-off happens. I think that it's primarily being driven by, the holders of the shares selling, but also I do think that there's still very strong evidence that there are a bunch of naked shorts in the mix, and those just so they make the supply seem so outsized because there are all these fake phantom shares in the mix. It looks like the supply is much, much higher than it actually is. And so then that organically causes the price to decrease because the supply and demand nexus point gets pushed lower when supply moves to the right, with there appearing to be a much larger supply. So that's that information. Now let's catch up on this whole, all the info that's being thrown around about Citadel having orchestrated this pump and dump in order to draw attention away from AMC and GME, which are more legitimate squeezes, and then to also like pump it up and then dump it in order to lock in a bunch of quick profit to make back some of the money that they've lost on AMC and GameStop. And listen, I'm just going to look at the data and see what's there and kind of make some comparisons. This isn't me saying that Citadel or any other hedge funds wouldn't do that. Of course they would. We get short seller reports all the time. Those are clearly one-sided views. Oftentimes they are very overblown and put companies and stocks in peril for sort of like spurious claims that don't come to fruition. But the funds who take short positions during that time frame when that report comes out profit heavily. So I think, that's why I've been calling it all along short and distort. Like, it's not just the shorting of the stock itself, it's the distortion that comes along with it in order to screw with the perception that people have of the stock or the price activity or the action and cause them to make kind of stupid decisions because they're being fed a bunch of misinformation. So I'm not saying that there's no world in which that didn't happen here, or that isn't still happening here. I'm sure it is. I just don't know that it's the exact thing that people are claiming that it is. So here's what people are really pointing to. Let me just get this in the screen for y'all so you can see it a little bit better. Let me see if I can move this over at all. No. All right, hold tight for a sec. Let me do it this way. All right. So here is basically what folks are honing in on, is this Citadel ownership in Clove. And I can probably make it bigger again now. All right, here we go. We're back in business. So this basically is Citadel Advisors LLC, ownership in Clove. So these are documents that were filed on 5/21, saying that they're disclosing their ownership of 513,775 shares of Clover Health, total holdings of nearly $4 million as of March 31st, 2021. So this information is finally coming out nearly 2 months after the thing that they're talking about. All right, so 5/21, and here's what's in here. These are the shares that you just saw in the value, and there's that, and then there's also disclosed call options. So they have 922,000 shares housed in call options, which are typically in batches of 100. As you know, one contract is 100 shares, and then disclosed put options, 429,000 shares that are tied to put options. So, here you see this is sort of like what you would expect from a hedge fund. They have long shares and they have call options and they have put options. So a lot of these things seem contradictory, but the complexities in which a hedge fund sort of orchestrates things, and complexity might be putting it nicely, that's sort of like where all this confusion comes from, because you're like, oh, you have calls and puts and you have longs, and what is your part in the short interest that's so high? These things all play a factor in sort of like just confusing people. But to me, just because Citadel disclosed on 5/21 that they have these shares doesn't necessarily mean that they were orchestrating or successfully orchestrating or trying to orchestrate a pump and dump. I don't exactly know where people are making that leap from. And this isn't to say that that's not what they're doing, trying to do the pump and dump. I'm just saying I don't know how people are making the leap from they have shares to, therefore, they are pump and dumping to draw attention away from the real squeezes and to claw back money that they've lost in the real squeezes. So 521 disclosure. So at the same time, AMC, which is seen as one of the more legitimate squeezes by people who are putting out this information, they have this report, all with these, similar dates. But let's take a look for Citadel. There we go. Citadel Advisors, again, 521. Disclosing, I meant to see, so let's look at what these columns are, since they're all the way at the top up here. Average share price and shares and the value of those shares, okay? So, average share price of $6.17, they had 724,000 plus shares of AMC. Okay, so the idea that Citadel is holding or is disclosing that they have been holding CLOV and that somehow is a pump and dump, when they're also disclosing on the same date that they have AMC and AMC at $6.17 with nearly 750,000 shares versus Clover, just over 500,000 shares. So it's, and the run up that has happened with AMC from $6 has been a much greater factor than it has been with CLOV. So again, I'm sure them holding AMC is still part of a more complex scheme that they have in place, but why wouldn't you look at this and say, oh, well, Citadel has clearly done this work in order to pump up AMC's price so that they can dump it, because they can buy the share. They have bought the shares at $6.17, and now they're just going to sell it when it's in the 50s. Think of the huge increase in price that is, and how much money goes in their pocket because of that. So, this to me is just say, I don't know exactly what they are doing with these holdings. I don't exactly know why they have these holdings. All that I'm saying is I don't know how the jump comes to they're pumping and dumping. Like what different data are you seeing from Citadel owns 750,000 on this date and they own 500,000 in CLOV on this date, and somehow one is a pump and dump and the other is what? I don't know. So this is where, folks have ideas. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just trying to understand how the data is compiling in any person's head to lead them to this conclusion that they've come to. And you might be 100% right. And it would almost be really interesting if you were right. It would make the movie that much more compelling, right? And so from that perspective, I have a tendency to want to believe that sort of a thing, but I have a stronger tendency to want to prove, what it is that you're saying and be able to follow the breadcrumbs that you piece together through the data. Okay, now another thing that was mentioned in my comments yesterday, the comment may still be there, you may still be able to see it, was that, Citadel had bought all of these shares and that they were the largest holder as an institution of Clover. Now, this is very easy to disprove. Like, it's almost silly to make that claim because it's so easily disproven. But let me just show you. This is NASDAQ. This is the NASDAQ website, okay? And this is, I had the short interest up here. We already looked at that. We know that the short interest is increasing from reporting date to reporting date still. But let's look at the institutional holdings. The institutional holdings, all right, so here's your ownership summary, over 100%, very suspicious, very much could mean naked short selling, which we've talked about that before. This many people have increased, or institutions, I guess, decreased, held, total. All right, pretty simple stuff. So here you go. 184 institutional holders holding this many total shares. And what do we see? We see Green Oaks Capital Partners LLC is the largest holder on this list. as you see, the value and the shares held goes down as you go down the list, row by row. In fact, I don't think that on this, I mean, look at, there's 13 pages of this because there's so many. There's 184 to get through. I don't even see Citadel on this first page. And we know that they had, what, about 500,000, right? So maybe they're on the next page. But look, I mean, to claim that Citadel has positioned themselves as the largest institutional holder of Clove is just a nutty thing to purport, because it's just not true. You can go right here and they will show you the data. And yes, this is older data, but we know that this date is 3/31, and we know that this filing says that on 3/31 they had this many shares. So, you know, this is just the lag in the data that we have, but the data that is the most up to date, that shows who is the largest institutional owner of Clove, is Green Oaks Capital, and then Vanguard, and then Bailey Gifford. Like, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to belabor it, but that's sort of like the frustrating thing about trying to follow people through their thought process on these things. Is, you know, what are you saying? And show me how it's working. And this is where it seems to not be making sense to me. So folks want to, you know, elucidate a little more clearly, point to exactly what's showing that Citadel owning 500,000 shares of Clove on a given date and owning 750,000 shares of AMC on that same date shows that Clove is a pump and dump, and AMC is something that Citadel has just lost a bunch of money on, even though they have 750,000 shares at $6.17. So, yeah, a little bit at a loss with those things. But, you know, I wanted to also kind of show, let me see here, lost my desktop. Okay, I wanted to also show just sort of like where those dates line up in the vast scheme of things. So let's go to the 3 months here. So on those dates, we saw, what, 3/31. So let's see what was happening on 3/31. So on 3/31, we were right here. So this is these are the dates that, you know, that supposedly was when Citadel was holding these 500,000 shares. So, you know, yeah, there was a bit of a run up the first part of the day, and then it was just kind of flat, and it ran up a little bit and came down almost to nullify all of the gains from the day before on the next trading day, and then was really sideways, and then had a big bump up, but that wasn't until April 8th. And then it got beat all the way back down. And, you know, then it ran up again and tried to make a push, and then it came back down about, you know, halfway, and then, you know, ran back up again. So this to me isn't showing like this was a very short-term pump. You know, that doesn't make sense to me. And then it, you know, if folks were looking from the 5/21 date, maybe some folks thought, okay, 5/21 was the date on the thing, so, you know, that's when the pump started, but it just was sideways until really like 6/2, and then it came up a little bit, and then it lost some ground and stabilized, and then it had the big run up, you know, on the 8th. So at a bare minimum, we don't have the recent enough data to say, you know, what caused this pump here. I will say that Clove has been on the most shorted stocks list for months. And so that's why when I first made a video on Clove, I said, I've been looking at this for months. The reason I haven't said anything about it was because the fee was so low. You can go back several days and look at my Clove video at that point and say, you know, I tell you right there the reason that I wasn't bringing it up. Same thing with Workhorse. Same reason that I didn't bring that up for quite some time was because the fee was so low, and that was a key component, what I looked for. That's why I was jumping on SoFi so early on in the mix, before that really started to move. So anyway, that's where I am at the moment. Certainly would love to hear what folks are thinking. You know, as we check in with what's going on today, it's really been an atrocious 2 days. People really kind of losing quite a bit here. 1348, like I said in last night's video, that should be the next possible level of support. And at this point, this downtrend has just kind of continued to spread, and puts us a bit after close, potentially colliding with that 1348. So we'll see how close comes to pass, if it can regain any strength. But these levels that we charted yesterday seem to be holding up pretty well today. So we'll see if that 1348 offers some additional support or what the deal is. But all right, that'll do it for this one. I don't really know where else to go, but thanks for watching. I definitely appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.